Welkom bij deze speciale podcast van De Goede Amsterdammer. Wat is nu mooier dan theater, muziek, dans en opera in volle bezetting in volle zalen? Kortom, deze podcastserie maken we over het Holland Festival. In deze podcastserie blikken wij vooruit op het programma van het festival en praten wij met kenners, critici en makers zelf. Mijn naam is Heerma van Voss en vandaag ga ik in gesprek met de Canadese kunstenaar Victor Pilon over de voorstelling Sisyphe, gebaseerd op de mythe van Sisyphus. En dat gaan we doen in het Engels, dus ik schakel nu ook over in het Engels. Victor, welcome. Before we start, let me introduce you briefly. Victor Pilon, like I just said, is a Canadian director, theatre designer, visual designer, photographer, born in 1958 and much acclaimed since the beginning of the 80s when he started doing all kinds of interesting projects like multimedia productions with big international tours, some large-scale events, visual designs for acclaimed television show The Planets. And besides that, he's official photographer for the British royal family when in Canada. And he received several awards, including one for Officer of the Order of Canada. And now there's Sisyphe, a performance during Holland Festival, which is created and performed by you. Victor, welcome.
Thank you very much for your interest.
To begin with this performance, this will be a performance that will take place during 12 days, 6 days a week, and 6 hours a day. You're the creator and the main character. Is this kind of project, is this something you've ever done before in your life?
No, usually I direct actors, performers, dancers, or musician. This is the first time that I do put myself under the lights to do this performance. My background is officially from visual arts, and the performing arts do come from the visual arts. So for me, it's going back to my first loves. So no, it is the first time that I do this kind of performance, especially a very demanding physically and emotionally performance.
Well, going back to your first love and also going back to a lot of sources from the past. And one of these sources I've read is the essay by Camus. You're inspired by the famous essay, The Myth of Sisyphe, which is published in 1942 and written by the French author Camus, who lived between 1913 and 1960. First of all, when did you discover the work of Camus, and what's your relationship with it?
To start with, I would like to add that I have an obsession for myths, in particular the Greek myths. I think that the myths are the prehistory of philosophy. So the myth of Sisyphus is something which I've been obsessed since I was studying at university. I didn't know how to approach the myth, how to make a piece that talked about the myth. First of all, I think we have things in our lives that troubles us, that transforms the meaning of our life. I had my partner that died in a tragic car accident, and I was sort of looking to understand the absurdity of his death, and I came upon an essay, philosophical essay on the myth of Sisyphus with Albert Camus. We know Albert Camus mostly for his novels or for his plays. Less of us know about his philosophical essays. And he write about the myth of Sisyphus, saying that it was a metaphor of our human condition. And that essay helped me through my grieving, gave me the base to create this performance. So that was extremely inspiring for me and I wanted through, he talks about the absurdity of life, that we all seek a meaning in our lives, and we are faced with a universe that doesn't give us a meaning to our lives. So there's something absurd about that. And he sort of helps us to understand that, to accept the absurdity. So I wanted to do the experience of the absurdity in the myth of Sisyphus.
Yeah, that's a beautiful answer, and also an answer which has a lot of follow-up questions in it. Of course, we will talk about your partner, Sylvain, if I'm not mistaken. But let me do it a little bit chronologically. You say you're obsessed with myths, and the myth of Sisyphe is, of course, the myth of a man who is convicted by the gods to eternally push a heavy rock upon a hill, and the rock constantly falls down, and then he has to do it again and again, continuously and without any ending or rewards. If you say you're obsessed with myths, was that something you also had in high school? Is it something you grew up with?
Yes. And at university, we did study mythology. And I think mythology helps us to give a sense of life. They explain a little bit where we come from and where we may go. And it gives us tools to be good human beings. So it helps us. They deal with archetypes. And with Sisyphus, he was punished because he went against the gods, but also he tricked death 2 times. Sisyphus loved life. He didn't want to be dead. He wanted to be eternal. And he pretended to be an immortal. He wanted to be immortal, so he pretended to be a god. So he's punished for trying to be a god. And we cannot go against nature. There is birth and there is death. So Sisyphus represents the cycle of life, from death to reborn, the cycle of the season, the cycle of the waves that come to the ocean. So for me, that obsession of the constantly return. At one point in our lives, we wake up in the morning and we ask our question, what's the meaning? What's the purpose of getting up in the morning, going to work, coming back home, going back to bed and redoing it the next morning. So these are existentialist questions, and Albert Camus helps us to understand that cycle of life. And he says that the Sisyphus is the ultimate hero of the absurd.
Yeah, and Camus, what I love about the essay, of course, I've reread it before this conversation, is the tone and the precision of the essay and the way he introduces indeed his philosophy of the absurd. And I wonder, you said you're always obsessed with myths, and then later on you read this essay by Camus. And was it immediately after you read this essay that you got the feeling, I wanted to create something out of it? I want to make a performance?
Yes, it came to me very clearly. For me, the boulder, the rock of Sisyphus, I said to myself, if Sisyphus rolls his boulder on the top of the mountain and it crashes back down for eternity, it will become dust, it will crack, it will break. So for me, that rock transformed itself into 40 tons of sand. And I wanted to experience the absurdity that Albert Camus talks about is in doing this performance, of repeating the same action day by day, hour by hour, without stopping. And for me, it was to be in that present moment. And Albert Camus says we can, even in the routine and even in the repetition, we can be happy. We can imagine Sisyphus being happy. We can be creative even in the repetition. We have that liberty. And Camus says one very interesting thing. He says, if life is absurd, maybe it's not worth living. He says we have 3 choices. Either life is not worth, it's absurd, it's not worth living, we suicide ourselves. And he says that's not an option. He says the second is a lot of people take the option of going into or taking in dogmas and living for the afterlife and not living in this present world. They live for the paradise, for another world out of this concrete world on this planet. He says for him, it's not also an option. And he says, thirdly, we must accept that we will not find an ultimate answer to our existence. We must accept the mystery of life. And in that, we must also try to be creative, to do something very positive. So Camus he says a big yes to life. He's extremely positive, and that sort of guided me through this performance.
Yeah, that sounds really motivational also.
Yes, it is very motivational. To be in the present moment, to experience life today, not for tomorrow, and to invest yourself totally in what you're doing.
Yeah, well, and then you have, of course, the intention of making a performance of it and the drive, and then the whole process of making the performance, I can imagine, starts. And what's interesting about your performance is that it will be like performance art is also announced, partly inspired by the likes of Marina Abramovic, and it's also called a performance marathon. And you briefly mentioned the sand that will be on the stage, not a rock, but a shovel and sand. Like I said, it will take 12 days, 6 days a week, 6 hours a day. And what will happen on stage? You'll be there, there'll be a sand, there'll be a shovel.
Yes, there'll be this mountain of sand, which I will move from spot A to spot B. And once that sand is moved to one spot together, I will restart transforming the sand. It becomes like a huge hourglass that just moves from one space to the other space. And what I found very interesting while I was doing it, at certain point, I would share my shovel with the audience. I will go to the audience and share my shovel. And in performing arts, there is no boundaries between you and the public. We're not in the illusion. There's not a text that is learned. Anything can happen. And you have this intimacy with the public, which you do not have in traditional performing arts. There's always the stage, the hall. Here people can touch me, talk to me, intervene. And when I share my shovel with the people, that's a very, very particular moment, very intimate moment. And when I take back, they become Sisyphus. And I think the myth of Sisyphus is something so universal. Everybody can identify themselves to that myth of the cycle of life and repetition every day. And a very special moment is when I take back the shovel. I usually touch the hand of the people. I'm only not even a meter between them. There's a human contact. There's a direct contact. We look each other in our eyes. And in my experience in Montreal, when I did this performance, I would say 75% of the people would be very emotional. People would start crying. So it was a vehicle for their frustration, for the pain, for their happiness. So there was that encounter that I did not expect at the beginning when I thought about this performance. I really thought at the beginning it would be a contemplative, more intellectual experience. But what I found out while doing it, it was more the heart, the emotion that was touched by the people. So it's very intimate. And I had a lot of témoignages of people that wrote to me about what it meant to them and what kind of experience they had. So that was very, very special and unexpected.
And these emotional encounters on stage came if I'm not mistaken, without words, right? You don't have a
without
text.
without words. The environment is in a. I have a sound environment. I have some songs. The lighting is very special. The shovel is mic, so everything I do with my shovel is amplified.
And there will be also music by the Canadian band Dear Criminals on the background. Which role will the music play in the wordless physical performance?
Yes, every half hour I will play this group, which makes a good reference to the myth of Sisyphus, to the absurdity of life. And this group was the favorite group of Sylvain. So there is an emotional connection also to these songs. And during these songs, I do sort of a small ritual. It's a very personal moment, a very emotional moment for me. And the rest is an ambient music that makes you, meditate and contemplate the space. Sisyphus is imprisoned in the Hades, in hell, sort of. So he's forced to do something which he doesn't want, but the environment he's in, he does something beautiful and creative. How can we transform a tragic event into something meaningful and something that can touch people's heart?
Yeah, and speaking about the tragic event and speaking about Sylvain, who you mentioned twice now, you've stated that his death brought you to this project, and because you won't talk about him on stage because there won't be no text, what kind of man was he?
He was an incredible man. He was a philosophy teacher. Yeah, he died in a car accident at 42 years old. He was admired by his students. We had a 20-year relationship. So this ended very abruptly. So he gave me the courage to do this, because I'm more an introvert person. I usually behind the screen. I usually direct. So this was a challenge, and at my age, I said I must try and do this to surpass myself, to challenge myself, and he gave me the courage to do it, the force to do it. And when doing the performance, when I did it in Montreal, I did it for 30 days and I did 182 hours of performance. When I was depressed or hard, and when I was experiencing the absurdity of the performance, I had to remind myself why I was doing it and to whom I was doing it for. So this will be part of also the performance, but also in Netherlands, it will be also talking about the absurd. We live in a time of absurdity with the ecological problems, with the war, with the political uprising, where truth is challenged. So I think we live in a very troubled world, in a very absurd world, and I think Sisyphus can relate to that also.
Yeah, I can imagine something that's maybe difficult, maybe not. But of course, you've stated it. The performance, just like the myth of Sisyphe, will be about the uselessness, absurdity of human life, but also, especially for you regarding Sylvain, going on with life, make new things, accept that life is absurd.
Yes.
Isn't it difficult to, on one side, to accept the absurdity of everything and the uselessness, maybe even of all your human attempts, and on the other hand, with full attention, create and do a performance with everything you have in it?
It was what I received when I did the performance. It was a lot of empathy and a lot of love. I think people can connect to things that are true. And that is an amazing gift to have that opportunity to live that. So that gives us the will to continue, because we create to share, to things which are that we live, and this piece was created by necessity. And I think every work of art should be created by necessity, and to help us to become more tolerant, more open, better human beings, and to live in a world which is more agreeable, more tolerant, and that for me is also part of making this performance.
Yeah, and that's the possible emotional impact of it, of course. And there's also the physical aspect. You're 66 now. You mentioned
Yes.
in your motivations that you also wanted to do it at your age. Well, your presence is the main subject of the performance. You'll have to endure a lot of, I think, pain, at least tiredness. How do you prepare for such a role? Do you practice with the shovel now? Are you in training?
Yes, totally. I have 50 tons of sand in my country home. So I've been training for the last few weeks, and it becomes more intense from week to week. So it is physically challenging, emotionally challenging, but on the spot in the hall, I am supported by the music, by the soundtrack, and by the people. It did happen very seldom in Montreal where I was alone. And that was the moment which I really, really lived the absurdity of the performance and asking myself, what am I doing here? But as soon as there is one person or a couple of people around in the performance, it changes totally. I do not feel the pain anymore, and I become much stronger and much aware. I try to connect with the people that are there, and that's extremely rewarding and very, very positive.
It almost sounds like a group meditation.
It is a form of communion, because in the simplicity of this performance, I cannot hide from anything. I cannot hide behind a text. I cannot hide behind a set. I am there extremely vulnerable. And I think people feel that. In a career of an artist, it's very, very rare that we touch something of the sublime. And in this performance, I have touched something which I've rarely experienced in my career. This is just an amazing gift, and I am looking forward to see where this can go, and especially with a European public, which are much more used to see that kind of performing arts and all of that. So I'm very curious, and also very anxious.
Yeah, anxious just to be on stage with this kind of performance, or for something more specific?
Anxious to be in the performance, since I'm an introvert, and how I think the biggest challenge is for an artist is to be authentic and to be real, and not to play, to be totally vulnerable. And that's when I think we can reach other people's heart, other people's soul. So this is something which I seek when I do this performance, and to be in contact with people and with their soul.
Yeah, I'm curious as well, and also because, well, you've mentioned a lot of things that resonate with you during the performance, during the making of this performance, both really personal, like the tragic accident, but also you've mentioned briefly the ecological crisis of the world right now, the big crisis we're in. All these things, for a lot of people, they would result in more negative emotions, I think. And I'm also thinking about when I was in high school, they taught me the myth of Sisyphe for the first time, and I read about it, and I thought, well, this is a symbol for all the uselessness of all the attempts. And I also thought it was like like a anti-hero Sisyphe. But when you talk about him, he sounds more like a hero and more like it all sounds really positive.
Yes, it is. And Albert Camus does in his essay at the last phrase, he says, we must imagine Sisyphus happy. I think Sisyphus becomes one with his rock, one with his environment. And ultimately, I think he nargs the gods because he is happy in this universe and he is making something creative. And yes, Sisyphus, I was at the beginning, I doubted when I read that in Camus. Oh my God, how can Sisyphus be happy being tormented like that day after day? But after 182 hours of performance, I was happy and I felt good about it. And it was, I'm still inhabited by the experience, and it's been a few years, and I'm still inhabited by the emotion and by the feeling that I had when I did this performance. So yes, Sisyphus can be happy doing something which is somewhat totally futile, because that is the worst torture we can give to somebody, is making him do something that doesn't acquire or accomplish anything, but just to do it and being in the present moment.
And the more you were Sisyphe on stage, the happier you became.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Ironically, I just I felt in peace. I felt a lot of serenity, and this came from the public. This came from the audience.
Yeah, beautiful. Camus, he writes, when Sisyphe descends the hill, he's completely aware of his miserable position and he's standing above his destiny. And I have even a direct quotation from the Camus essay. The fight itself against the top is enough to fill a man's heart with warmth. We have to imagine Sisyphe as a happy being.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Do you think during these 6 days that you'll be on stage during the Holland Festival, we'll get to see and be looking at a happy human being?
Yes, after 12 days. After 12 days, yes, you will. I would hope so. You never know. You know, there's a lot of improvisation in performing arts. We never know what's going to happen from 1 hour to the other. We never know how the public will react, and we will see how that goes in Amsterdam. But yes, I think we can imagine Sisyphus to be happy, and I'm looking forward to have the audience to experience it also, to give them the shovel and they become Sisyphus. Everybody that I shared my shovel with were transformed a little bit by the experience.
Well, I'm looking forward to it as well. Thanks a lot for this conversation, Victor, and good luck with the last preparations.
Thank you very much, and we will see you soon.
Yes, great. Thanks. U luisterde naar de podcast van het Holland Festival in samenwerking met De Groene Amsterdammer over de voorstelling Sisyphe van Victor Pilon. 16 tot 28 juni te zien in het Transformatorhuis op het Westergasterrein. Ga voor kaarten naar hollandfestival.nl. De productie en techniek zijn in handen van Giselle Mijnlief en Alma Abt. Mijn naam is Heerma van Voss. Bedankt voor het luisteren. Het Holland Festival wordt mogelijk gemaakt door het ministerie van Onderwijs, Cultuur en Wetenschap en de gemeente Amsterdam. Productiepartner Amoddo, hoofdbegunstiger Fonds 21 en presentatiepartner Hartwig Art Foundation.